Hello and welcome to the Bravo Outsider Podcast. I'm your host, Craig Midwinter. Got a great show today because we are going to be talking about the premiere of Real Housewives of Salt Lake City Season 5, and it was amazing. But we're also going to talk about the most recent episode of Real Housewives of Orange County. Dylan is out today, so I'm joined by our guest co-host, Sandra Kloak, and we are very pleased to be joined by our guest, Benji Rothman.
I'd rather live a short life with a good tan than a long life being pale.
That's good. We're going to be talking about Real Housewives of Salt Lake City and Orange County. All right, let's get into Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Benji, you want to tell us what happened in this episode?
Yeah, we had the Bezos party, Lisa's Valentine's Day Bezos party. Which, like, who throws a Valentine's Day party, first of all? Like, that's wild. And then just for women only, it's crazy. But interesting, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I guess it was the season premiere, so we kind of got some kind of fresh intros for all the ladies. I'm not sure if we got introduced any like new characters.
We
Bronwyn
did.
seemed like
We
it's a new character. Yeah,
Bronwyn is brand new, and then there was a couple friends of that kind of got teased. We saw Brittany working pretty hard there as well.
Yeah. So as that unfolded, there was some big time drama at the end of the Valentine's Day party. Yeah, between the host and her esteemed guest.
Yeah, and what do you think the number one question that the audience has coming out at the end of this episode?
Number one question. The tagline of the episode, which I'm not sure if you noticed, but I think it's a good question. Is it costume or is it couture? I mean, it's really, I suppose it's in the eye of the beholder, but yeah, you show up in a big furry heart outfit. I think, is it a costume is a fair question.
I don't know. It read fashion to me more than couture, but I am like almost always in a t-shirt that I got for free from work that they sent me. So maybe not the right person to make that judgment call.
There. That would have been perfect at the Bezos party.
True. Sandy, how did it read to you?
The heart thing?
Yeah.
Man, I wouldn't have called it a costume unless I wanted to be an actual housewife next season, like Brittany may, but I'm looking forward to Bronwyn's outfits. She reminds me of Chanel Ayan on Dubai, just having the most wild out. They're kind of costumes, come on, but whatever they are, they're amazing to watch. They're a feast for the eyes. They're a truly separate addition of value to these shows. I find my 5-year-old comes in and she always says, "Oh, what's she wearing? Oh my God!" Just to all these women, and so I'm looking forward to what Bronwyn has to bring, whether I think it's silly is beyond.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, having these housewives that make bold choices really adds a lot to the fun of it. I think, Chanel is a great example. Erica Jane was like that when she had the money to do it. Dorit is doing that as well. Dorit has some swings and some misses, but I think overall it's interesting. And I think that Gina also tries to take swings every now and then, and it doesn't necessarily always land, but we're seeing it a little bit in the confessional looks this season. I have to say I like it. It's not to the extent, it doesn't have the high budget of some of these other looks, but I don't know. I like it. I like a swing.
It's a swing. You're right.
I have one more question.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. No, you go ahead, then I'll ask my question.
I was just going to say my burning question. Was that what you were going to say? You have another question?
I have an additional burning question, but it was probably going to be different.
Okay, you go first. You go first, and if it's not already talked about, I'll say mine.
Sure. My burning question, which I think the audience is probably wondering too, can you really get a yeast infection from sitting in a bath?
Oh, that is a good question.
First time I've ever heard that. Didn't know that was a thing. I don't personally. I'm with her. I don't take baths, not for that reason, but just other reasons in general. But something I didn't think of. I'm not sure. It depends on whose
bath bombs you use.
True.
Ooh. Or who you share a bath with? I don't know. I've never heard that either. But I get the general grossness of the bath concept.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one.
If you're putting bread in your purse, gonna get bread in your
Bring
purse.
it into the bath.
Can't be soaking in that.
All right.
Wait.
Oh yeah, you had another question.
My question is this: did Angie make the scroll herself or buy it somewhere? Because we had a whole someone layered out the steps you have to go, and I want to know if she did that or if she bought it somewhere, which would be like equally as hard to find. Anyway, that's mine.
It looked like it was handmade. I thought it was handmade. It has
is that an insult?
No, that's praise. Yeah, she works hard. As Mary said, she's a hard worker.
I can't believe we still have Mary. She's so amazing, and I did not think she'd last all these seasons.
Coming back as a friend of was the best thing that happened to her, because that is the perfect role for her. She doesn't need to engage at the level that it would require in order to be a full-time housewife. But seeing her at all these parties to add that level that she brings, I think is fantastic. It's awesome. She's one of the best friend ofs that is currently on air. Maybe the best friend of right now. Let's talk about the artistic presentation here. Benji, what stood out to you?
Certainly the intro of the season. I'm not sure if this is how they introduce all the seasons, but yeah, definitely some pretty innovative production work and camera work there, kind of floating through people's homes. Certainly more interesting shot because you're up in the mountains. You kind of get the feel of, you're in Utah. And really kind of getting a peek through people's lives. This was some pretty high level production there.
Yeah, totally. I loved this. I thought that it was really effective, having this almost like this irreversible style, if you've ever seen that movie, where there's this fluid kind of meandering camera that with almost unbroken, no visible breaks in the shot, and kind of going through all their lives. I really loved it because I think one of the things that happened at the end of last season was there was this big question about how real are the Real Housewives, and Monica, this fan turned spy that infiltrated this group and is trying to call out all these women being fake and whatnot. I think having production answer this by wandering through their daily lives with this monologue about how much they put out there, I thought was a really good way of maybe not giving us a full-on answer to that, something that we that takes away the question from us, but it did give us a little bit of a reset, it reset the world. We got to see the lay of the land and all of these families and all these women going about their daily lives, and it really brought us back into this world, right back into the narrative world of Real Housewives. And I thought it was really effective. It was visually really intriguing, and tonally, the way that they are kind of treating Utah with this, with the Mormon church kind of lurking in the background. We got the bell tolling and the choir accenting things. I just really love the treatment that we get of this show overall. So yeah, I love that as well.
Yeah, and then even
did you have any other ones?
I was just gonna say with the intro, more to your point, just the final tagline that we get. We remember what connects us and pray it won't happen again. Does give you that little tinge of, oh yeah, there's a religious aspect to this show, to this version of these housewives that you might not get with some of the other cities that you deal with.
Yeah, totally. Sandy, anything stand out to you in terms of the presentation here?
Yeah, I mean, kind of building on the conversation when we start with a wide shot that shows, I think we all are pretty aware that it's a green screen of their homes by now in their confessionals, but exactly as you're saying, it was a huge, just being honest about the meta-ness of how reality TV has evolved into this thing that is about itself. And that was just a really good visual way to indicate, we all know this and we're doing it, we're going forward anyway, and we're seeing what happens. So I like that, how they started off with that for at least everyone or a bunch of people, leaning into that self-awareness of that. Obviously, the drama of the music and, the camera work, as you already described, was pretty hard to ignore. I love it. We talked last season about the final episode and how they really leaned into this Shakespearean Macbeth style witches circle vibe with the, the storm and the wind and gray, color themes and standing in a circle on the beach. And they literally had them stand in a circle and saw them from above. It was so occult-like, right? It was so striking. I love how they're just hamming it up and going all the way on those themes of the witchiness, and especially because there's a huge juxtaposition about the religious setting. So it goes back to our previous discussions of sense of place, and why I love this franchise so much is because it really does sit in the place, right? It's not that, of course the looming churches is always sort of a backdrop of the history of these women, even if they've broken away from it, but how they're using it artistically in all these establishing shots, we see the juxtaposition of these buildings that are religious and so many nature shots that could be seen as like the witchy, wild sort of opposite of that. And I really liked how they were juxtaposing those two things. As well as just the dark on white. A lot of the women had really dark outfits, dark hair against snow. It was just this really intense, dramatic contrast that I really, really enjoyed. So just a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Salt Lake City is bringing the heat visually, I think. I want to talk a little bit about the structure of this episode, which I really liked. I love how the framing narrative for this entire episode was like the party at the ranch. It all basically took place at the ranch, with the exception of flashbacks that we got. It opens with like 45 minutes before Lisa's party, and it ends when Whitney exits, and everything else that we see is framed as someone talking about something that happened, or we're getting like a little bit of an intro, but it's all like framed within this ranch. And I really loved it. I love how we got everyone's arrival to this party used in order to give their backstory here. It reminded me a lot of like a whodunit, and whenever someone entered, we got them giving just a little update on what they've been doing, or an intro to how they are related to the group if they're a new character. And I just really loved that we had this really strong framing narrative, which we don't see a lot of on these shows. Usually, it's going, an episode is going to take place over multiple like locations, and people are all in separate places, whereas this was all very much grounded. And I just thought that was a really strong choice to introduce everyone in that way and set things up that way.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's go ahead.
No, I was going to say, were there any quotes that stood out to you, Benji?
Definitely like the first bit of drama we got that kind of kicked off, which ended up being a super dramatic episode, was "I love your costume," which is Brittany's quote. Which, ruffled some feathers, literally and figuratively. Really kicked things off. So yeah, that was a big one for me. Like I said, the quote at the end of the intro, I love. I don't know if they do that every season. We remember what connects us and pray it won't happen again, I think is a great summation of, and like a hilarious quote. Like,
yeah,
you just pray that like bad things won't happen again. It's pretty funny. It's like that. I'll do it. I like that. And then, I'll get to the scroll in a minute, because I feel like that once we start talking about strategy and things like that. But yeah, there's some quotes there that I enjoyed. Yeah.
Well, let's get into it right now then. In terms of strategy, you brought up the scroll. What stood out to you about that strategically?
If you just, I get it's a reality show, whatever. But if you have a beef with someone that you really actually want to take care of, you don't do that publicly. And then what she's trying to do is like, I'm going to call out my friend here because she's a huge bitch. But then you do something like that, and then you're the asshole. Immediately when you put that much thought into this thing, clearly it's been bothering you more than it has been her. You put that much thought into it, so you did some arts and crafts at home for a long time and like did this big dramatic thing that's like, it's like you just immediately make yourself the asshole,
Yeah.
And like, if I was, and who's she calling out? What was her name?
Meredith.
Yeah, if I'm Meredith, like, I know this isn't very housewifey strategy, but I would have taken the high road there and just been like, you know what, Angie, You're right. I'm sorry. I've done some bad things to you in the past, and I do apologize. And then she just left standing there with the scroll, like,
That is a good idea.
Right?
Yeah, I think that Meredith Marks lacks the skills to diffuse a situation, though. She is such a reactive person. Like, that's what makes her a great housewife. The fact that she is going to have some sort of, like, off-put reaction to any situation. She is... So, like, Angie picked exactly the right person to bring this scroll to, I thought. I love this. I love having a physical, like, prop as a piece of strategy. Like, yeah, I love it. I think that Angie is such a fantastic addition to this cast. She was definitely overshadowed last season by Monica being such a really, like, compelling story that we got. But, like, Angie did so much work last season, just her overall persona. She's always in these over the top, like, sunglasses. She's, she brought props to the Palm Springs trip that she wasn't invited on and just showed up on. I think she's, like, just got the instincts down to how to, like, make an impact here, and she's a fantastic housewife. Love it.
Craig, I love it too. I love it. It's amazing. One thing I thought was really funny about how Angie did this was she kind of, like, got in line behind Whitney. Now, I know Meredith started the fight with Whitney, and that's its own topic, but Whitney kind of turned the tables on Meredith and really started, like, giving it to her, and which was awesome. And then Angie just kind of, like, jumped in and was like, I also have something I'd like to tell you. And it read a little to me like lack of sophistication or, like, nerves on how she was going to bring this up. I think overall you can't go wrong with a prop for making a splash, but do you think she lacks sophistication in her delivery, or do you think her style is just its own type of sophistication?
Yeah, I think she does lack sophistication, and I think that that's okay. So yeah, like, I think that her own style is maybe unsophisticated, but I think that is fine. She's able to do that. Like, I think the way that Meredith Marks operates is not really sophisticated either, but she just is able to, like, react to things that are going on. She's able to make herself, like, the center of drama without, like, coming across as necessarily being self-centered. Meredith, I mean. So I think that, like, the way that you operate strategically doesn't necessarily have to be really sophisticated. And I think that when you do have a sophisticated approach, sometimes you just don't get the recognition for it. Like, I think Whitney is a great example of having a very, like, sophisticated approach to how she navigates situations socially, but, you never hear her name come up in the conversation of, like, great housewives. Same with Gina, is another person that I just really love the way they navigate the social situations and the way that they kind of see the playing field, and they don't get the recognition for it. So yeah, I think that it's fine to be unsophisticated in how you navigate it, as long as it's interesting or compelling in some way. And Angie is definitely that. Did you have any other strategic decisions that you wanted to talk about, Benji? Whitney, she's the one that was on the podcast, right? Yeah. I mean, she's just full of just lies and, like, just defense mechanisms, just constantly. She had a lot of things getting thrown her way at the end there. Just, like, crazy. That was actually another cinematic piece that I enjoyed too. That it just, like, you could really just feel her just getting swallowed up by all these accusations. To which she was deflecting every single one of them. And, like, actually, like, she didn't really crumble there. Like, she didn't break down at all. She stood pretty strong. But yeah, there's no way that every single one of those is bullshit. Like, at least half of them were probably true. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So.
But I feel like Whitney is, as she said, this is Hild Whitney. And she's, like, not taking any shit. I feel like that's different. Do you agree, Craig? I mean, she had her moments where she'd fight back, but I feel like this is a different vibe just in this episode. Yeah,
I think that she came across as being a bit more I don't want to say active, but like she was a bit more on the offense when she was confronted with things. Like I feel like you said, usually she'll kind of see what's going on, take it in, and then kind of respond in a more subtle way. But here she was a little bit more in your face about it. I am curious to see how that kind of plays out for her, because like I said, I do think that she has been a great housewife ever since she has been on the show, and being able to kind of work in the shadows a little bit to navigate things. I think that one thing that was really interesting about how she handled this was when she kind of let it slip that she heard what Lisa was talking about last week. Like it was definitely like intentional in order to rope Angie in. And I just thought it was a perfect moment to really create that divide between Angie and Lisa, who have had an otherwise like pretty good relationship. So to choose that and say, yeah, well, I've heard I could talk about all the things that I've heard you saying about me this past week. Like that is a very specific thing to let slip. You know that is referring to something specific that Lisa is going to latch onto. And then Lisa's like, wait, there's only two possible people. Like, who is the mole here? And it immediately created a divide that Angie is not going to have the space in order to navigate this situation and stay on side with Lisa. So it forces her into Whitney's corner. And I just thought it was a really like good choice to kind of, force someone onto her side so that she's not there on her own. And when all those accusations, we got that beautiful like moment where all those like accusations are piling on Whitney, like she's able to say, hey, this is a pylon, pull the ripcord and walk out, and Angie goes with her. I thought that, she created that safety net real fast and was able to use it. And I thought it was really smart, a great example of her just being a really smart housewife in terms of gameplay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It didn't strike me at the time as like, I wasn't sure if that was a genuine slip up and she or if that was intentional, like you're saying, which if it was, smart move.
Yeah, I think I'm like, I guess 90% confident that this was intentional, just because this is the sort of thing that happens really consistently on all these shows, but also the way that she phrased it was very specific, like referring to a very specific conversation. It's not a way that people will just casually like talk about things. It's not like, well, I could talk about all the things that you've been saying about me, versus I could talk about all the things I've heard you were saying this past week, is very like specifically referencing a situation. And it seems like she had to go out of her way in order to invoke that conversation. So I am 90% confident it was a legitimate throwing that in there and trying to like frame it as a slip, as opposed to it just being a slip. Sandy, did you have any other strategic decisions that you wanted to discuss?
I liked Lisa's intro speech to her party, just dropping a quick hit on Whitney and podcasts.
Yeah.
Just kind of just throwing that in there to get things going. And then obviously it was followed up with at dinner, which is nice. Maybe not the most eloquent party speech, but it did the job. So that was good. Yeah, that's about all for them.
What do you think about this beef between Lisa and Whitney? Like, do you think that this offhanded comment that Lisa's always been the villain is enough of a foundation for a blowout fight that is going to sustain itself for multiple episodes?
I mean, if a bath bomb can be, then that certainly can.
Yeah, that's true. Speaking of the bath bombs and strategic decisions, the idea of launching a product as like a strategic choice in order to create a beef on the show is really funny to me. Yeah. But I
love how she's like shocked that Meredith is upset when it's literally referencing that she's gross.
It was designed to upset Meredith, going through the whole like product design process just for this. And then like, it's so crazy, but it's clearly what happened. And for Meredith to like come out and accuse her at that, it comes across as crazy. It's like, it's foundation in order to gaslight Meredith into thinking that she is like crazy for thinking that Whitney would go through all this effort in order to just piss Meredith off. But that's definitely what happened.
It is, and you're right. That's pretty brilliant. But why did Meredith, like when Meredith brought it up, she didn't say like, you did an entire ad, like literally mentioning me and our thing. Like she was just like, how could you make bath bombs when I make bath bombs? Like she didn't even go there.
Okay, Google. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's crazy.
I feel like Meredith went into that not ready for what she got back. And then tagging Angie on the end. Meredith was like discombobulated, right? Like even at the end of, so strategically, I mean, I guess Meredith, I don't know how strategic she is or if she just, speaks her mind all the time, but she went in there and then Whitney just was like, nope. And she clapped back so hard. And Meredith even had to say, I'm just processing what you're throwing at me. Like she couldn't even, like she was done. And then Angie came in next in line. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
It definitely seems like Whitney is ready to be to be in a defensive position and handling all of the shit that's going to be flung at her from using an offense as defense strategy. So I'm interested to see how this evolves. I want to get into our highlights now. Benji, what highlights do you have?
Yeah, definitely the scroll was a big one. Yeah, the introduction of Bronwyn, I think was definitely was pretty cool. I think you could tell she's a good character, good intro to the show. Just a few little things here that just kind of subtly, like I just like the shot at the end where she walks by and like there's a band at the party and you just like see the guitar player there like
awkwardly laughing.
I love that. Some little nuances like that I thought were great.
How about you, Sandy?
I think most has been said, but I do want to come back to Brittany and her performance. So she sits down, she says, I love your costume, and then whatever, the conversation moves to Mary, and she said, oh, I guess because I didn't have a lot as a kid, so, and then she says, and so you became a hoarder, and that for sure comes from watching the show and knowing for a fact that she's a hoarder. So I was trying to figure out so great job, Brittany, making an impression. I could totally tell, like, level of sophistication wise, I guess, where she was operating here. Like after Mary walked away, she said, I really offended her. And she almost sounded like sad about that. But I'm like, did you really say that by accident? Or like, what do you think? Where do you think she was at? Did she just want to make sure she got a scene? Like she did it. So, but how intentional and how did she want it to go versus how it went?
I think 100% intentional. I don't think that she knew what she was doing. The choice of being like costume was so intentional, I think, and then picking and choosing ways to poke at Mary felt really intentional to me. I mean, if you're not sure whether something is a costume or not, you would probably use the word outfit, because that's the safe way to play the situation. I think she definitely was trying there.
I mean, I agree she was trying. I guess there's something about, it felt there was like a little bit of a lack of confidence, but maybe that was all part of the game. There was a bit of an awkwardness there. I don't know, that I was trying to place how that fit into it all. Like I agree it was intentional, but then was it just scary to do and she still exuded a bit of awkwardness or what?
I think that it's just from being like new to this. She wanted to give herself some plausible deniability and, frame it as just being aloof. And, if she needs to, she can move forward with them because she can play it off as being, a genuine misunderstanding or whatever. She just doesn't have anything. Like she's coming in with no chips and just trying to create something. So I think that it was giving herself a little bit of an out because she needs to play it a little bit safe. Cool. Let's get into our stars here. Benji, who are your stars?
It starts with Bronwyn. Like I don't know if you kind of see like the star power in her as a new character. Like I think
for sure.
she's going to be a huge star here. Like She's hot. She's pretty. She's kind of crazy. She's got this she's got the background that like is really interesting. She comes from Mormonism, but she was like this big party girl and got kicked out of university. She's not shy to talk about her 65-year-old husband. She's not shy to call herself a trophy wife. She described herself as funny chaos, which is a great brand. She's like all these fashion choices. Yeah, she's a star right out the gate for sure. Yeah, and then just a couple other, I do like just the little cameos that we get, especially from guys. You don't see a lot of men on the show, so the men that appear and have to deal with these women is hilarious. The guy that's helping her set up the party in the beginning, Wade, was hilarious, I thought. So very subtle character there for me. And the guys in the band, like I said, were awesome. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sandy, how about you?
Gotta give a star to the cinematographers, whatever the term is, the industry term for the people doing all that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give another star to Bronwyn's fashion sense specifically, because I'm really looking forward to that, as I said. And the last star, I mean, I can give it to Mary because she's just delightful.
Yeah, nice. I have to give a star to Whitney because she was very active this episode, and same for Angie. I think both of them really were working really hard, coming out of the gate swinging. Love that. There's so many people that deserve a star here. I think I'm going to give my third as well to Bronwyn because she immediately was compelling when she came on. And yeah, I'm really curious to see how things play out. I think, we didn't see her really start a lot, but we got a little bit of a sense in terms of how she's going to navigate conflict when we saw her sitting down with Brittany during that one scene. And then also we saw when she was trying to get Angie to stop talking about the house and and Angie continuing to bring up the house. I'm curious to see what's going to come from her. I think she could be a really good addition to this cast.
And one more unspoken star, the chef. My God, that beef tartare looked so great.
Oh yeah,
the whole course looked like a great party.
Yeah, totally. Oh, I had a couple highlights that I forgot to mention. The way that they were talking about during the fight, they used a lot of like pseudo therapy speak, which I really loved when they were talking about, their healing journeys not being aligned and who is like weaponizing whose trauma and talking about, what does your grace look like? I just really loved that they were using this therapy speak in order to try to get some sort of like moral high ground and be in the right. I really love that. And that's the main one that I wanted to call out there. Let's dive into Real Housewives of Orange County first then. Do you want to give us a quick summary of what happened from your perspective in this episode?
Yeah, it seemed like the biggest kind of plot point of the episode would have, I guess, been Emily's dress size, and kind of the rift that she had with Lisa, was it?
Heather.
With Heather, right, with Heather. Yeah, it seems like Emily's been doing a lot of work to kind of work on herself and slim down, and Heather, I guess, kind of threw a little wrench into that with the dress sizes.
Yeah, that's definitely like the main heat that we got in this episode. There was a lot going on here in terms of not directly related to the interpersonal relationships within the housewives, but we got a lot of context about their family situations here that I think was one of the more interesting parts to explore for me. I'm curious though, Benji, what question do you think most viewers are left with asking at the end of watching this episode?
I think the two biggest ones for me, I think, were like, did Heather like intentionally try to kind of big time Emily there with the dress thing? Definitely a big kind of question that kind of we could go either way, kind of is left unanswered. And then I think the other really interesting part about the episode for me, because you don't see a ton of guys, but Dawson, what a character! Will Dawson be better off living the bachelor life with his dad? Is he making the right decision there? So yeah, I think that'll be an interesting thing to follow.
Yeah, totally. Sandy, what do you think the answer to the question? Do you think that Heather is intentionally trying to shade Emily? I know that they do have like a history of conflict between those two, but I'm curious what your thought is.
I'm always interested in Heather's motivations. As we know, she's a pretty interesting character because she's got this. Her motives for being on the show are complex, and I'm always really interested in trying to figure out what is she doing. I mean, her comment saying that the dress was tight on Emily was in the confessional was pretty shady, which would lead to some nefarious, attitudes in her court. And I don't know about the jeans. I don't know. I don't have a good read on Heather, Craig, but I'm dying to know what you think. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I think when Heather is talking about, like, she was not responsible for, like, picking out things off of the rack and that, I think that was, like, probably true. I think that Emily's got a legitimate, like, gripe with Heather, though, about just not feeling heard when she's trying to just express herself. And very quickly, I think that, like, Emily is a very self-aware housewife, and I think that she very quickly realized that, this is about me, this isn't about you, and she, like, expressed that, but was, like, so overwhelmed by emotion. And I think that Heather was not really receptive to, like, hearing her out, or, like, validating her feelings in any way. So I do think that Emily does have, like, a legitimate beef with Heather over this. I thought that what was most interesting about this was how Alexis tried to insert herself into this fight. She's, like, maybe one of the most annoying presences that I can remember in recent memory on these shows. And so for her to, like, jump in there and try to make it about herself and insert herself into this conflict, I thought it was really funny.
Agreed. Love her.
Yeah, she was really grasping for something there, and I wasn't connecting the dots of how she was making herself upset about the whole situation.
Yeah, you were not alone in that. That wasn't just a lack of context.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the artistic presentation here. Any themes or artistic choices that stand out to you, Benji?
I mean, just first of all, like, I don't think this is just really particular to this show. I think it's particular to a lot of reality shows, and I think just shows in general. Any, like, flashbacks, which I appreciated as, like, kind of a new viewer to the show, it kind of caught me up with what they're talking about. They're always in, like, kind of this duller coloring and, like, this black and white sepia tone.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that's just kind of, like, human nature in our brains, where, like, we just see that and we're like, because that's how we remember things in our brains, or that's how we dream. We don't really dream in color, I've heard, or whatever. So we automatically, like, it kind of hits us a little more clearly. Oh, this is a memory, this is a flashback, sort of thing, which I appreciate. That does clarify, like, what is going on. Yeah,
it's interesting how this has kind of become a convention of the docusoap drama to do this sort of color treatment. I really enjoyed it. And when we talk about Real Housewives of Salt Lake City especially, I think that episode was so reliant on that as a storytelling device that, it really kind of hammers in how we just we don't even need to see, like, a flashback card that says, 2 weeks ago or whatever. When we see that color treatment, our brain just automatically registers that this is something that is within a different narrative continuity than, whatever we saw previously. And yeah, it's a really effective storytelling device. Sandy, was there anything that stood out to you in terms of the presentation here?
I really tried, Craig. I tried for you, and I got nothing. I have times for Salt Lake City, as I'm sure you do. This show, I only had a chance to watch it once. I was going to try to watch it again to see if I could squeeze something out, but it doesn't speak to me artistically. It's not hitting those buttons for me, so I'm going to leave it to you.
Yeah, it's interesting that you call out, though, Salt Lake City having a lot more depth to it artistically, because I agree. I think for sure it does. I think that Real Housewives of Orange County, and I think to an extent, like, Beverly Hills and a lot of the older housewife shows, are a lot more beholden to, like, the structure and the format of the franchise, whereas shows like Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, and maybe I shouldn't say the older shows, because, like, Real Housewives of New York also, I think, is able to, like, sustain its own identity and, like, make more artistic decisions that venture outside of the structure and the format that we're very familiar with. But Orange County is very like rigidly structured like a Real Housewife. Part of that might be that it's the prototype for these shows, like it was the first one, but it is very like adherent to that structure. Whereas, you know, Salt Lake City, we're seeing them make all sorts of artistic decisions that defy various like conventions or just like make a bolder choices. I did find a theme within here that I thought was really interesting. I touched on it a little bit. I think when we got all this kind of backstory about the relationships that these women have with their children, we're seeing the effect of like divorce on all of their children pretty heavily throughout this, because like you said, we got that scene with Dawson where Jen is, you know, having a heart-to-heart with Dawson, and we're seeing how, you know, she's trying to navigate this new landscape of like being a single parent or a separated parent, and we're seeing how that impacts her son. We also got to see like the friend date between Tamra and Katie and their daughters, where they're talking like very honestly about how their mothers' relationships with their fathers are impacting their views on relationships going ahead. And I just found it like really refreshing that we're getting to see this kind of discussion happen in a way that doesn't come across as like preaching the right way to navigate these situations, just an honest kind of like reflection on how this is happening, not saying what's right or what's wrong, because there's no like clear-cut black and white in real life. There's no like right or wrong clear-cut way to handle this. So seeing this honest presentation about this, the good and the bad, I thought it was really interesting. And there was a choice moment that was interesting as like a point of contrast, was when it was like leading up to the GLAAD Awards, or at the GLAAD Awards, where Terry and Heather have just a little bit of an aside where they're like, I don't think our kids understand the struggle because, you know, we're such a accepting house. And I just thought that the way that they kind of frame the harmony within their house as a contrast to, you know, what we're seeing in the family life of these other women was particularly interesting.
Yeah, I think it was Katie's daughter who's talking about she's not sure she wants to get married, have kids, whatever. She was kind of a scene stealer there. I thought that was actually a good perspective and actually a pretty meaningful moment of the episode there that was, you know, pretty real. I know it's Real Housewives. I don't know how much realness there is to it, but that felt like a pretty real moment. Yeah, I agree with you that was really nice and touching. And yeah, the most like I said, Dawson is a very interesting part of the episode too. I did want to mention just two more cinematic things that I appreciated.
Yeah, sure.
Well, first of all, like it does seem to me like the outfits and the fashion is like kind of the main point of the show, and like the thing that I think really captures most viewers, or like, you know, when they're coming to the party and like they get these slow motion shots, fashion shots out of the Escalade, and like, oh, what's she wearing, you know? Kind of it makes it clear that this is like the main attraction of the show. And there was one shot that I thought was actually really great at the party at the end before the argument about the sizes with Heather and Emily. Who's the Asian lady, Tamra?
Katie.
Oh, that's Katie. Yeah, Katie. When she shows her ass, I don't know how much ass you're allowed to get away with on Bravo, but they had it was like the perfect amount of ass. I felt like they figured out the maximum of ass you could show on camera. They figure, oh, this is the in between these two heads of hair here, we get a little bit of ass, you know? Yeah. So I thought that was nice.
For sure, someone has figured out like an algorithm for determining like how much ass they can show. They probably got like a plugin for Adobe Premiere that they can just apply to a clip, and it will blur the right amount of ass. Yeah. It was really interesting when they played that game that they had, you know, a dare like show your butthole, when, you know, Heather pulled something that was just like, oh, bark like a dog. And can you imagine Heather pulling show your butthole? Like that would just never happen. It makes me wonder how real these games are, because that is definitely not a card or a block that I could see Heather like pulling and following through with.
They told the new lady she had to show her asshole or she's off the show.
Yeah. You know the deal.
What quote stood out to you, Benji, from this episode?
definitely the biggest one would be You're a Wackadoodle. I'm not sure. Like, Alexis and Emily, they have some accents. They don't seem like they're from California. They seem like they're from the Midwest.
Yeah.
So, yeah. When she dropped You're a Wackadoodle, can't say I've heard that one in a while. Great insult. I feel like it really hit home. And described Alexis perfectly. She's a wackadoodle. So
yeah. What were your highlights from this episode?
Like I said, yeah, I like the kids. I thought they had some good insight, and I thought that was an interesting part of the show. I thought the Glad Awards was pretty funny. Like, they kept talking about Oprah and like, oh, Oprah's here. And like, was Oprah really there? I don't think so. You know, I was waiting to see Oprah, like talking about it. Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure Oprah's not at the Glad Awards. I don't know. That was pretty funny. Yeah, the Glad Awards is funny. She has 3 queer kids. That's cool. She has 4 kids, 3 queer ones, which kind of makes the 4th one the queer one, I guess. I don't know. That's what you're dealing with. It's kind of against the norms. But yeah. Overall, like a good episode. I didn't know you could get testosterone injected into your ass. Maybe that's why. Like, I don't know.
I know. I second screened this for like 2 seconds, and then when I came back, they're talking about Emily getting testosterone in her ass. I don't know what that does or why you might do that. But
yeah,
Emily broke me from my doom scroll that was starting to take over.
Like, do you think that's why she was so fired up at the end? Was it the testosterone that was like just pumping through her and kind of raging her out a little bit?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. Sandy, what are your highlights?
Glad Awards, I noted that Heather was in along with Meredith Marks from Salt Lake City as a Real Housewife, and I just noted that that's got to hurt her because she is a legitimate actor. And that's really a storyline for her, maybe not quite officially, but sort of one that we've been following is her quest for a legitimate career and how that may or may not mesh with being a housewife. And so I imagine that she might have liked to have been introduced as something else. I'm not saying it was a shock to her in the moment, but I feel like that's got to be a little bit of a knife in the gut.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a quote that I really liked.
Oh, yeah. What's the quote?
I have a lot, but my top one was, I'm already broken. I'm already a broken bird. Done by the Wackadoodle. She gave us an amazing performance, and I am so grateful. And related to Alexis, Gina, I guess when she was freaking out because they're getting sued for extorting Shannon, and that's making Alexis upset or whatever's happening. Yeah. Gina was saying, like, it seems like you're just obsessed with this whole thing and you're not, that's all you're talking. I don't know exactly the context, but she's like to Alexis, who you are is enough. It's way enough. Like, yes, it is way enough. It's too much already. Don't add anything else, but do, because I love it. So Alexis is so fun. And I was kind of missing her in the earlier part. I'm like, she better get invited to some sort of event because I need to see some Alexis. So those are my main highlights. Also, I guess we got a little more understanding of what the Shannon and Vicky show is, and I didn't fully process that it involved it involves tap dancing with the little like outfits and top hats, and that's not, I guess, what I was picturing. It's a variety hour kind of vibe. I guess they had to pivot hard. Obviously, that was the point of that when Tamra quit. But I don't know if that makes me want to see it less or more. I hadn't thought about it a lot, but just seeing them doing their little tap number, I don't know. What are your thoughts? Is that a draw? Is that going to get the crowds out?
Yeah, I mean, I was probably not going to go to this even if it... Well, I don't know. I don't know if I would go see this anyway, but I think that if anyone can carry it on, like Tamara was the one person that they could afford to lose. I feel like Shannon and Vicky bring so much more like to a potential stage show. Like Tamara, I love her as a housewife, but both Shannon and Vicky have an energy about them that is just a little bit more over the top. Like we've talked a lot about Shannon just having like a natural comedic timing and just being a very like physical comedian when she's like just operating about her daily life. And Vicky obviously is like has all of these iconic like very big physical moments. So I think if anyone's personality is going to like translate to the stage, it's going to be Shannon and Vicky. Tamara, not so much. Tamara, I think, is like a really, really effective at playing the housewife game. She's like one of the people, maybe the number one housewife that kind of created it. Like she created the meta of being able to stir the pot and play the game and the espionage that we see here. So I think like she's obviously a super valuable housewife, but like she's not really the person that I would to go and see a stage show. I don't know. That's just that's my opinion. Let's talk about strategy though. Benji, was there any strategic decisions here that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I like Alexis. I think just having no strategy, just throwing shit to the wind is a strategy in itself, I guess. Just be as loud as possible is cool. I did like, okay, Dawson's mom, what's her name?
Jen.
Jen, yeah. Jen, like, I honestly, I thought that, like, she handled that situation pretty well, you know? I mean, you can, when you're dealing with, like, a teenager like that, or, you know, young guy, it's like, you know, you can't, you know, bossing them and like saying you're going to do this it's not always the best strategy. It's like, you know, you can offer guidance, you can offer and she was positive about it too. She wasn't like, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. You know, she had a bit of that, but like it was a lot about like, you know, I see all this potential in you. And you know, I just kind of reinforced her love for him and like let him make this decision, but to let him know that he has her support is I thought was really nice.
Yeah, I think that she did a good job handling that situation, given like the context that we know about her. Like she's dug herself into such a big hole in terms of just overall how she navigates life. Like she has really taken a backseat in her whole life. Is the kind of the view that we get of her. She's just figuring out now how to pay bills and how all that works. She's obviously kind of let her kid run a little like wild and just taking the easy road. So to see her make some more difficult choices here, I think was a way that we've seen, like it was a good way to see the growth in her character that she is undergoing. So yeah, I think that for the position that she was in, she did a good job of not trying to get out of a hole by like continuing to dig. So
question about her though.
I like that.
Where's the alimony at? Do we know what's going on there? Why is she so broke?
It's still like in the courts. The divorce is still fresh, so they haven't really settled on anything. And I think one of the things that makes it especially difficult is, I think she said that her husband was employed in maybe a family business or something like that. But anyways, as a result of the divorce, he also job or something happened there. So his income is not like as high as should be. So she's quickly become pretty dependent on her new boyfriend, Ryan.
I see.
At least that's as far as my understanding goes, and might be as far as Jen's understanding goes as well. Sandy, what stood out to you in terms of strategy here?
I guess just back to Heather, her strategy almost always is don't be soft. Don't, like you were saying, hear people only minimally if it's not going to allow her to give an inch. Like she sort of has this guard. She's always defending herself. We saw with Shannon when she was like, if you ever come after my family again, and all of that famous quote. So is that strategy working for her? She doesn't want to be a villain, but she wants to be the boss, I think. And so is that working though? I don't know. She didn't come off great in there.
That's an interesting question. Is Heather okay being a villain? Because I kind of feel like she is okay being a villain. Like I feel like she is open to the idea of being a villain as long as she can create a like definitive line between, you know, how she is as a person versus how she is as a character in that dynamic. Because it seems like she really tries to self-produce all these scenes about her family, but then when she's in a group dynamic, she is very like cold and closed off, and like she seems like she is okay being the bad guy in situations as long as she is adhering to some like whatever moral code that she has for operating the housewife metagame.
Yeah, maybe you're right, because it's like she clearly cares about her reputation and her you know, how she's coming across in the sense of her values, that she's supporting all these causes and her family and diversity. So maybe that got me off the trail, because you can still be like, you can still believe all that and be like a villain in a social situation.
Yeah, I'm thinking kind of in terms of the conflict between like Katie and Gina and how she's kind of navigated that. It seems like she is not choosing something that is, you know, necessarily like popular or going to make her like this hero, but she's thinking more in terms of the power structures and who she can rely on to be more of a pillar to her being the top dog. I feel like that's kind of her motivation, and that's why she was more open to forgiving Gina after Katie kind of drops this bombshell that Gina's using her for her social connections, which whether or not that's true is still TBD, but it seemed like Heather was open to, you know, continuing a relationship with Gina if it benefited her within the social structure that she's kind of trying to manage underneath her. I think the most interesting work that we've seen in terms of strategy and this social situation is from Gina this episode. We got to see Gina go in with Shannon and really work towards maintaining that relationship. And also we saw her do good work with Emily in that conflict between Emily and Heather, making sure that Emily feels heard and stuff like that. I feel like Gina feels very comfortable with her position with Heather, even despite the fact that Katie has been trying to erode at that. I think she sees that as not being effective. And so the fact that she was able to choose to comfort Emily in that moment and build that relationship up, because I feel like maybe that is less solid than it has been in the past. I thought that was an interesting choice. I feel like Gina's doing a lot of groundwork here, and I just like to watch her operate because I do think that she's really great at playing that game.
Yeah, she was kind of the first to come to like support Alexis there too.
Yeah.
As futile as that endeavor would be, but you know, she tried.
And she also had a complex question to navigate when they were playing the shady Jenga about Travis's dick size, which we have all heard the rumors.
Right.
Okay, let's get into our stars here, because I'm very eager to talk about Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Benji, who are your stars from this episode?
Yeah, like I said, I'm a big Dawson fan. I think Dawson's cool. Katie just gets some ass points. She was great. And yeah, that's my two biggest stars. And then just Alexis, just for the entertainment value, like was a train wreck. And like that's what you want from a housewife. You don't want to see, you know, give me an A or give me an F. And that was a pretty fabulous F we got there. So
yeah, totally. Sandy, how about you?
My top star goes to Gina's really uncomfortable looking metallic pants. The final party scene. And my other two stars will go to Alexis and Emily for their duo performance for us in the high drama.
I think my number one star is going to go to Emily, and then number two has to go to Alexis, like you said. And number three, I'm going to give it to Jen. I think the scene that we got between Jen and Dawson, like you said, it was a real emotional cornerstone here. And I spent most of the last season of Real Housewives of Orange County in our coverage talking about how shitty a housewife I thought that Jen was. I am ready to take it back. I think that she does bring something to the show. I will admit when I am wrong. I thought that this was a good performance. We're seeing some nuance here, so I'm going to give a star to Jen. She is redeemed in my eyes, and that's all that matters. Did any of you guys have anything else you wanted to talk about with Real Housewives of Orange County before we move it on?
Just as a guy, like I can't tell the difference between size 12 and a size 2. It all looks kind of the same to me. You know, when they were showing the back-to-back, I was like, oh, she's size 12, she looks fine. She looks great. She's lost some weight. She's doing great. And I also don't think that Heather was wrong. It was pretty tight on her. That's not a bad thing. I don't know. She looks fine. Size 12 is like normal person size, it seems like.
Yeah, totally.
Love it.
Well, thank you so much for doing this, Benji. Do you want to let everyone know where to find you? You've got a new comedy album coming out, right?
I do. Coming out at the beginning of October, we have my comedy album. It's called Comedy for Hot People, and it's recorded just earlier this year. Really excited to release it, share it across all platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, and on my Linktree. I'll make some CDs. You buy some CDs. And follow me on Instagram at iPhoneBenj to be up to date with all my shows coming up.
And we'll have those links in the show notes / description. So just check below wherever you're watching or listening to this. Sandy, thank you for filling in for Dylan. He's got spotty availability over the next little bit, so I'm sure we'll have you back pretty soon. Do you want to let everyone know where they can find you?
Yes, I am at Corporeal Curios on Instagram if you want to take a look at some art made from hair.
Awesome. I'm Craig Midwinter. You can find our socials on Instagram and TikTok at Bravo Outsider. The main place to find us is on YouTube. You're probably watching here right now, so just hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, and we'll show up in your feed. Until next week, keep on wiping.